if the people we love, our parents, our children, the creators that shape our world, could stay with us longer? What if aging wasn't something we simply accept, but something we can understand, influence, and maybe even change? In this episode, we're going to explore one of the most important frontiers of our time, longevity. Not as an abstract idea, but as a real, rapidly emerging field where science, technology, and capital are coming together to extend human life. And joining us is someone operating at the center of it all. Artem, named Forbes 30 Under 30 Scholars, is a leader in longevity, working across research, investing, and real-world applications. At Stanford University, his research work sits at the intersection of biology, computation, helping us better understand how aging works at the system level and how we might intervene. But Artem isn't just studying aging. He's part of a broader movement turning breakthroughs in the lab into real solutions, backing companies with capital, supporting innovation, and helping shape what many are now calling the longevity economy. This isn't just about living longer. It's about staying healthier, staying sharper, staying present. So the question is, are we ready when longer lives become the norm? And what will it take to get us there? Let's welcome Artem Trashuk. All right, Artem, we're very honored to have you with us. You are incredibly talented. I think probably there are very few people I know that wear more hats than Elon Musk. You got the researcher hat, you got the startup founders, and you are even a VC yourself. You got 3 hats, and big hats too, given such important topics we're working on. But before we get to that, let's talk about the science part of aging, because I think a lot of people may not have a clear understanding of what aging is about. And what is it that people usually get wrong about that?
So when I teach classes at Stanford and we ask students if they want to live to be 100, how many students do you think raise their hand and say that they do? Like, what do you think? What would be a good number?
For me, I would probably say everybody would raise their hand.
Not at all.
Wow.
Yeah. About 50% of students raise their hand. And this is your 25 to, that's 2019, 2021 college kids. About 50% of them say that they want to live to be 100. And always the follow-up question is, why? Why not? Oh. And the answer is, well, is it the quality of life at the end that's going to be the same as in my 20s? Because if it's going to be pretty bad and I will not feel like I'm aging well, right, I don't want to live to be 100. And so people prefer like the quality of what it means to be old is as important now for people who are younger as it's even more important now, like the quality aspect. So it's a super interesting concept, and longevity has become so mainstream now that a lot of people are talking about it. In Bay Area, we're in this bubble where a lot of protocols, peptides, optimization, things that all tie into this aspect of what is it that can optimize, that can make me live longer, live well, live better. But it goes back to, am I living well or not?
All right. So there are actually 2 issues here we're talking about. One is about the raw number of age, and the other one is quality of life or health span. There's lifespan and health span. There's 2 things. Which one are you working on right now? And are they related somehow?
Both are, in my opinion, both are interrelated. I think that as people get older, they want a certain level of quality that they've been used to. And once things start breaking down, you'll start looking for interventions. How can I help myself have less pain, be able to be mobile, be able to have things that I am losing, maybe say the way I look cosmetically. What excites me the most is the fact that you can build interventions for a lot of these processes as you get older. And even if we hit a certain number, everyone's biological age is different. So say, do Do you have a smart anything on you? Any smart watch, smart anything?
Everything on me is smart except myself.
I ask because all these apps, if you've noticed, like the Aura Rings, the Whoops, the Garmins, they'll give you a number.
Right.
They'll be like, your biological, your age is this as compared to some number. Sometimes it's higher than your age. Sometimes it's lower than your age. Your blood biomarkers will give you a number. That number honestly doesn't matter as much as if the interventions that you're doing are changing that number over time. So if my blood biomarkers are that I am, say, 35, for example, but then I do an intervention for a year of different foods, different diets, different exercises, and the blood biomarkers come back and say that I'm now 45, just aged by 10 years with some intervention. Either the test is off or whatever you're doing isn't working. And so I think both are super critical and super important.
But fundamentally, I guess this is a philosophical question. Why do we age? Like, why do we pass away?
The biological answer, or so have you heard of this discussion? Is aging a disease or is aging a process? Well, where do you fall in the camp? Which side are you on?
I think it's a process. I'm thinking that it's a way to ensure our DNA is freshest, something like that.
Okay. So it's interesting. Both camps have their own view of how you can intervene on aging, depending on where you fall. If you think it's a process, then that means that over the course of time, you'll have different things that you need to do to slow down that process. If you think it's a disease, you'll think that I can have a vaccine for aging or a cure for aging by just taking a shot, and all of a sudden it's going to fix everything. Both camps, well, I don't know which camp will be right just yet, because both camps have data that they'll throw at you and say that they'll be compelling. Now, my personal take is it is a process as you get older, and there's just things that start to change as you're living on this earth. And so whether or not we can transcend to beyond the average lifespan, well, one, people are living way longer now than they even were 100 years ago.
Right.
So what does that mean for a society as a whole as people are living longer? Jobs, the ability to do more things in your career, changing your careers. There's a lot of things that are changing in society, might not be as quickly adapting to the fact that people are living longer and living well or better than, say, 100 years ago.
Because my father, he's getting old, and he actually told me he wants to be able to live forever. And
What's your thought on that?
And I told him, look, a lot of kings, a lot of emperors in the past been stating that, and I feel like Artem is one of those. They will run out and trying to find a fountain of youth or some kind of miracle medicine to increase that. So, can aging or can people's lifespan be actually increased, or is it because what I learned is that for the last maybe 100 years or so, lifespan increased significantly, and most of the factors have to do with maybe better healthcare, better food, nutrition. None of it actually have to do with the real limiting factor of our age. Are you actually trying to improve that part, or improving the other aspects to ensure that we live longer?
Now, again, I think it goes back to, if I do live to be 100, what does my 90th year look like on Earth? At 90, can I still run, walk, move around, think? If the answer is no, then are people studying that biology to develop drugs to intervene or things to help you at 90? If I am going to live just as well at the age of 90 as I was at the age of 60, then sure, maybe 100 sounds like a good number. Now the question is, do you actually want to be around forever? And that's where we go into.
Not my father. Okay.
Like that's the question is how some people do, and the thing is, in the longevity community, there is a group of people who are like, there can you transcend time, and maybe you can do that by cryopreservation, for example. Have you heard of the companies that are like folks who are working in the cryopreservation space?
Yeah, I believe there was a company in South San Francisco, and they freeze maybe 50 to maybe 100 people by now.
There's something like that. There's a few in Europe as well. I think they're working on it. The technology behind it is, well, it's actually, when I started looking into it, there's like these payment plan options. You can either have your brain frozen with your spinal cord, or if you have more money, you can have your body frozen. Now, in the future, it all hinges on in the future, there will be technology that will be able to restore the cells that have been like liquid nitrogen frozen, essentially. Now, as a scientist, I can tell you that cells don't recover well once you unfreeze them. There's viability issues. But say that's not a thing, right? That they'll fully recover. When I teach on the science of longevity, and we talk about this topic, the question that students are most animated, most interested in talking about this, because if you think about it from a societal implication, you have a birth date, you have a death date. That's your freeze date. And then you have a revival date. Say for theoretical, if this worked, by the way, this is all theoretical. This is not, I'm not saying this is at any point keep the capacity works right now. But say you have a unfreeze date or a revival date. What does that mean for you as an individual? Do you get another birth certificate that's part 2 now? Or is it that you're a different person completely, even though you're the same person in a way? And then there's a lot of these companies, some of their approach on how they will choose or how they will unfreeze you is not everyone gets to be unfrozen. It's in the future, society will determine who adds the most value, and we will then decide as a committee who in our freeze pods should be thawed. I don't know. Like, what kind of future would that be?
That's going to be very interesting, and it costs a lot to be able to do that too.
Yeah. What happens? I always joke with founders about like, what happens if there's just like a power outage, and then the freezers stop working? Then what, But yeah, it costs like around $250,000, $300,000 or so to put yourself in storage. But I honestly think that instead of focusing on can I transcend time, it's more interesting to focus on can I have better quality now and give back to the time that I'm living in, rather than focusing on can I transcend and focus on what I'll have in the future without focusing on what you can contribute to right now in the current present.
Right. So it's good that we start talking about the development efforts, and you yourself are looking into a lot of startup companies too, besides the one you built. What are some of the research that you have seen out there that's actually working and it's actually can improve our lifespan?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of interesting science that people are working on. And the way that the longevity invests is they really focus on having data-driven claims or data-backed claims. So anything that a founder is claiming to have some sort of validity and longevity, there is, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of snake oil in longevity. There's things that people claim, but there's no backing to those claims. And so what happens is you take a supplement, half of it's placebo effect, half of it doesn't work. But the reality is that there are legitimate companies that are working on things that are doing interventional diagnostics for earlier detection of cancer, for example, or being able to remove senescent cells, which are your zombie cells that aren't having any type of activity in your body, or being able to develop new drug discovery pipelines to address these different root causes of aging in the different processes that happen as you age. But all those have data to back it up. So I say for anyone listening to this is look at the claims or the data that they are saying and see if there's any scientific validation done on any of that. Otherwise, it becomes a hype and social media craze, and there's not it will come as fast as it goes.
Yeah, I think my father fell into a lot of those scams online, and he'd be willing to pay anything just to extend his lifespan.
What's the most one that pops to your head as the one that he's like tried most recently that you're like it was interesting?
Yeah, there's all these Chinese medicines that
Mm.
supposedly, but I'm pretty sure those are all placebo stuff.
A lot of Chinese medicine, to give them credit, a lot of Chinese medicine do work, and there's been a resurgence recently on social media that I've seen of younger people who are like, we need to do it the way that the Chinese medicine folk establishment teaches, of like the original way of how they've done it for thousands of years and so forth. So like hot tea in the hot water in the morning and different kind of herbs and
Right,
stuff like
right,
that.
right.
And it's just these are trends. I think again, a lot of it comes down to how you're feeling and taking things, and how your body's responding.
I would trust a lot more with the work that you're working on than,
Appreciate it.
than hot water in the morning. So I know you are involved in AI at Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
but now AI is in just about every field out there have
Mm-hmm.
AI. How is AI doing in for longevity, and what kind of
Yeah.
impact?
So two things I'll comment on. The first, on generally the way in which AI has enabled the ability for us to mine data has allowed for what before was harder, now is more easier to do, is personalized stacks, like a personalized stack. So your body and my body will react differently to a simple sugar. So if we both eat some rice or a banana or an orange, my insulin spike will be different than your insulin spike, even though it's the same fruit. Now, that means that your body's underlying genetics have a certain way in which they process certain foods, which means that your medical care needs to be more personalized to your needs. AI enables that. And if we look at longevity as a process, as you get older, there's certain things that we can capture with wearables, with your data, with your blood biomarkers, with different things, and see what we can do for intervention. The simplest intervention that I've done recently, and I got my parents hooked on it too, is put a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor,
Okay.
for 14 days. Buy it on Amazon, stick it on. Don't change anything at all in your lifestyle. Just put one on and see what happens when you eat different foods. And I will tell you that if you want to manage your insulin to reduce the risk for type 2 diabetes, to be able to have better insulin sensitivity, you'll be surprised at the different foods that you eat and how it affects the way your body responds. For example, with my parents, my dad spikes different to a sushi roll than my mom.
Interesting.
My dad also spikes differently to certain sweets than my mom, even though they would assume that they would both feel the same for eating those types of foods. So what they have done for an intervention is they've reduced the intake of certain foods and adjusted their diet slightly to be able to manage the super spikes in their daily lives. And that's like a simple intervention. Easily anyone can do if they want to, and then you'll be able to get data for what your body needs. So that's where I think it's like super interesting to start with. I can pause there. I can tell you more about other things. On the societal side, for AI in longevity, it's going to come down to access. If we develop a super drug that can extend your lifespan for 50 years or whatever, is it going to cost $100,000 and only the rich can afford it? What about the rest of society? How can we make equitable access as we develop more of these technologies? And so a lot of the work at Stanford is looking at as we're deploying AI tools in the healthcare setting, how can we ensure that the access is still there and we're taking into account patient preferences, community preferences, as we're expanding care, we want to make sure access and equity is also expanded.
Of course, right. I just have a feeling that this episode gets out there, we're gonna get a lot of calls asking you how they can improve their lifespan. We're gonna get a lot of requests from that, and you can contact Artem directly.
Sure.
Or contact the company that you're forming right
Perfect.
now.
Absolutely.
So one of the questions always is, for a lot of technologies out there, they can get out in maybe they can scale in half a year or so. products out there. But for longevity, for some reason, it takes a long time for that to come about. What's the bottleneck, and where's the slowdown on this
Are we
industry?
talking about technologies like computer programs?
There's
Or
solutions to improve your lifespan. You don't see like every 3 months there's a new solutions now, and then it'll increase by 0.5 years. The other one increased by 5 years. You don't hear a lot of news on
yeah,
that.
imagine if that was the case though. Like imagine if there was a drug that you take and it's like, okay, in 6 months there's a V.2, an updated version, and you have to transition to that one because this old one is not working as well. And then actually we found a bug, so please take this new one because we have to do a quick code adjustment to the old one. I mean, I wouldn't want to put something in my body that had so many iterations across, So inherently with the space, when you're working with the human body, it is very regulated, and to rightfully so, to protect against things like version control of 20 different versions by the time you get to the final product. You want to make sure that what you're testing is actually going to be beneficial.
True.
And it's easy to restart writing code and just delete and restart the system. It's not as easy to delete the person because that means you're dead. So we'd probably want to make sure that whatever we're putting in the system is good. But to kind of the bigger point, aging is not defined as a disease by the FDA. So everyone who's working in the longevity, quote unquote, space or any kind of biological space, you have to go through the same pathway, same regulatory pathway, clinical trials, prove your stuff doesn't harm. There's benefits to what you're going to be consuming. So at the end of the day, you're still going through the typical biotech process.
I see. So I'm sure you look at a lot of startups, and and the money going to them. What's the space that's overhyped right now? You think that's not gonna happen, but still a lot of money is flowing in. What's overhyped?
There's the way that I think about that is that there's a lot of solutions that claim certain things they don't have for full backing in, and then there's a lot of things like, so I'll give you a concrete example. Supplement companies. A lot of the times they'll claim a bunch of things of some new fad, new trend, and something new that's going to help you live longer, live better, perform better, etc. And it doesn't work. And then because a lot of it is placebo effect, and a placebo is a huge drug. If your mind thinks it works, it will work in some capacity. So with that, there's a lot of folks jumping on that. The current wave right now is called peptides. I don't know if you've
small peptides.
Peptides. So there's peptides for your brain, peptides for your skin, peptides for your gut, peptides for fat loss, peptides for muscle gain, and like all these different peptide protocols.
But that needs FDA approval, right?
So that's where the gray zones kicks in, and so yes, short answer is yes. You do need some sort of doctor involved in your treatments, but in this sort of gray, unregulated space of supplements, which don't need FDA approval, that's where these sort of peptides sort of come into play. Now, and the amount of people who are starting startups or how-to businesses of how to launch your peptide business, or go to this supplier, use my code to sign up for this, and 15% off, et cetera, pyramid schemes to the full. but it just kind of goes to say that, for example, some of these peptide protocols, the names will like things like C-Max, Novo Dojo, Dragon Dojo, Mojo Dojo, and like these are the names of actual things that people consume that will make them feel like they are limitless. And to be honest, I don't know how much of it works and how much is harmful. I think more is on the harm side to overdo anything, but it is the nature of where we are in just Silicon Valley, and just the nature of people being interested in that.
Right. And then conversely, what about some areas that you think are underexplored and we need to put more emphasis, whether it's NIH funding, FDA, or whoever, we need to spend more money into investigating? What sector and what field you think needs to more work on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've thought about that some. I think that an area that we haven't really tapped into is women's health as much. I think that there's been a lot of emphasis and focus on optimization, protocols, cardiovascular has become a big thing. People have been talking about that. But things like menopausal management, for example, and women's health as a whole, there's not as much studies and work has been done in that space. Also, the link to why is it that young people are getting cancer? There's a lot more young people getting cancer now than before. Colon cancer, for example, is one of the big ones. And there was a study that just came out of Europe where they looked at they took a bunch of patients, young folks who had colon cancer, and did a bunch of analyses on the genes of the cancer types. What they found was the summary of the article was that there was a pesticide spray that covers our food that, when consumed starting at a young age, it leads to causes of cancer.
Interesting.
And so think about it. Finding that finding can lead to a change in regulatory policy that can lead to a decrease in cancer in younger adults. That's one simple intervention for increasing longevity. But like things of just increasing funding for basic science research like that will have a direct impact on someone's health and wellness and overall societal kind of like someone who's healthy will cost the system less because we have to treat them. We don't have to treat them for cancer, for example.
Right. I saw at the same time, I saw another study about colon cancer can be increased with eating processed food. And my wife used that study and said you need to stop eating all those instant noodles and things like that.
But they're so good though.
They're so
Right?
good, right? Yeah, increase your happy index.
That's the thing. Sometimes you need that happy kick, and just not too often, but still, you do need that.
So I'm sure you're looking at a lot of investing space, and there's a lot of chatters that billionaires are funding the research in longevity, and I'm sure you probably know who's out there doing this. And so the question comes down to is, who benefit from these research? Is it ordinary people? And then you mentioned earlier that Stanford has ethics studies on this, and can you tell us a little bit about who benefit from this research?
So a lot of the work that you're talking about has public benefit to it, and the hope is that everyone will benefit from this type of research. Now, do people pay to do certain work to be able to understand how maybe cryopreservation would work? Yeah, people are paying for that. But I would say that most of the work that's being funded is also getting into the public domain in terms of in ways of publications and other projects. Now, it goes back to, if we do find the fountain of youth drug, will that be something that everyone can have access to, or is it only going to be available at a high price, and then only certain people can afford that? And I think that as a society, we should all work towards being able to have it be public benefited for everybody, as something that's not only select for the few.
Right. That's a very, very critical questions, and it comes down from a policy level. Similar to the drugs they have for dementia, I mean, it's really, really expensive, and then who can afford pay for that? And that's always a challenge for that. Another question about this is the social and economic impact. When you start to increase the length of age, and we're seeing the Social Security is collapsing and healthcare systems collapsing because of all these problems. What do you foresee the problem coming in if we start to tinker the end of lifespan?
I think that, we live in a time that we get to have 3 to 4 generations of parents, grandparents, great-grandparents still living. If you even look at 100 years ago, you might have had your mom alive, maybe your grandma alive. Now you can have your mom, your grandma, your great-grandma, all in a multi-generational household in some capacity. That is a first for humanity, if you think about it. Like back in, people used to live maybe to the age of 40, 30. And so just having that access, I think, one, builds this component of we can have a more of a community-based system. What does living longer mean if you are living to be 100? I think that gives people the opportunity to have multiple careers. So you don't necessarily need to have one thing, and you're locked into that one thing, and you're done. you can pivot. You can go in a different direction. Stanford has this really cool program called the Distinguished Careers Institute program, fellowship program, where folks who complete a career can come back to school and start taking classes with college students, any class they want on campus. And then they can essentially learn, see what's happening, and start something else. A lot of folks who come to our Intro to AI classes, most recently we hosted a class where we taught people how to vibe code, which was for a lot, and most of these folks are post-career individuals who are coming to just learn because they're curious. And what it enables is for the demystification of all these technologies that are out there. So a lot of folks, I had folks like, I don't know what vibe coding is or AI or what it does and such, and then started playing with it. They were super creative with the apps that they were building. One guy had an app that he built that was doing a clock countdown to launching to space, some shuttle on his phone. He was super creative. But then a lot of people were also trying to figure out, how can I give the AI a bunch of biomarkers and have it tell me how to personalize my health. So when we were talking earlier about personalized health in respect to AI and longevity, people were vibe coding tools to get that answer by themselves. So like, here, I have my blood biomarkers. Tell me what I should do for improvement in sleep or improvement in just mental clarity. Wow. Here's, and the AI tools are enablers for that, which I think is really exciting.
Wow, that's amazing. Now I think about, maybe I should start a second career or something, trying to figure out and learn
join one of our classes. We'll glad to have you there.
Very interesting. So as you work on your career, at some point, I'm sure you have a goal. So for longevity, what is the end goal? Living forever?
For me personally?
For you personally,
I don't want to live forever.
You don't want to live forever.
I don't like. I think that everyone has a certain age that they're going to be around for, and I'm totally fine with whatever mine is. I don't know what that is, but I would I want to be around for 500 years? I don't know if I would, honestly. Like, I think at some point you got to pass the reins on, right? So I personally won't. But I think what is exciting right now, in my point in time, that I think should be a guiding principle for many is, are you building stuff that matters for people who are getting older, or are you doing things, do you have a purpose? I think the biggest parts in longevity that we've seen that help people live longer without a bunch of interventions. So your standard interventions for, eating whole foods, working out to reduce sarcopenia as you get older, management of metabolic dysfunction, so your heart health and so forth. Those are your standard prescription that anyone will tell you as things that will help you live longer. But the thing that's underrated that is important is a sense of purpose. So much mental health and mental clarity comes from, do you have a purpose? Do you have a sense of purpose in whatever field that you're in? Do you know why you're here? And so many, I've seen a huge influx of just young people struggling with self of identity and self of purpose through just working through. And then, is the job that I'm doing leading to that? Is the work that I'm doing meaningful? And so that ties into just your mental health and your ability to just understand that whatever you're doing matters. Mm-hmm. And so I think that in itself, and everyone finds that purpose through different ways, can come through faith, can come through just community, it can come through what you're building, or maybe your excitement on something. And I think that is the most important. If anyone gets anything out of what I'm talking about today, what is the purpose that you're doing on this earth right now, and building towards that? That would be a key takeaway, I'd say.
This is amazing because we look into different fields, different industry, different sectors. Longevity is not just science and engineering. There's philosophy, there's meaning of life, purpose of life. There's so many going to that. That's amazing. So, what got you started into doing working on longevity? What got you started?
Totally. I think it was not I woke up one morning and I was like, let's do longevity. I didn't even know that there was a field like this. until just being in the Silicon Valley ecosystem, coming to do my PhD work at Stanford, and you're just plugged into folks who are doing cool stuff, cool science, and the discussions around, can you live forever? What does that look like? What are biohacking interventions? All that just kind of fused into being plugged into that ecosystem. And it's cool to be able to think about how do we impact policy and the way in which AI tools are being deployed. How can we invest in interesting startups that are working in the ecosystem, and how we can also build in that ecosystem solutions that can help someone live well. So, for example, what we're building at Swaza is a respiratory solution that can help you breathe without having a ventilator. So, during COVID, people were on ventilators. There weren't enough oxygen tanks going around. Imagine if you can have a solution where you just nebulize a nanoemulsion, and you can have 24 hours of oxygen in your lungs without needing an oxygen tank.
Oh, interesting.
And did you know that as you get older, your lung capacity decreases?
Right.
As it decreases, there's more pressure on your heart to pump more because it needs to circulate the same amount of blood.
Right.
That causes an increase in
Stress
on the heart, an increase in the amount of heart attack, and just overall compromised lung function, pneumonia, a lot of other things. Now, that all comes with age. Imagine we can help someone who's getting older to be able to do the simplest thing that we take for granted, which is breathing. That in itself can help someone live better, way longer. So things like that. I think there's meaning in doing work in this space and across different ecosystems to be able to contribute.
Was there a moment in your life that really changed you, and you started to, this is a very important thing I'm doing?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think that for anyone who's building or anyone who's doing anything that has any meaning that they ascribe to it, it just kind of comes with the territory. I like I said, I don't necessarily think that someone just wakes up one day and has I'm all of a sudden longevity, or I'm all of a sudden I've decided that I'm now going to be this. It just kind of comes with the territory and the ecosystem that you're around. That's kind of how I've come to see it.
Yeah.
I don't, unless someone convinces me otherwise, I don't think you roll off the side of your bed and all of a sudden you're like, I'm this or I'm that. I don't think that really works that way.
But working on this, has it changed your personal habit or your personal? I mean, you indicated earlier that you had your parents to wear a continuous glucose monitor, but for yourself, has it changed your habit? You don't eat instant noodles much now, or?
I mean, I still like those instant noodles and your In-N-Out burgers. I have a good order for In-N-Out, and like your Panda Express also is solid. We all have those cravings, and what I've personally learned is it's okay if you if you do 90% well, 10% fungible is okay. You can have your instant noodles or your whatever your pleasure is, because sometimes your body just craves it, and that's a sign. Just listen to your body what it's craving. Don't overdo it, obviously, but
have that craving every day,
there's a balance, I think. But if viewers are thinking about how can I improve my longevity, the simplest things that any doctor, anyone will prescribe, but the simplest, cheapest protocol you can have is working out. Resistance training leads to more muscle mass. More muscle mass is good as you get older. When you get older, you have less muscle mass, you have a higher chance of falling and breaking things, and just the recovery is much slower. Bone density increases, muscle fibers increase, muscle building releases certain cytokines into your blood that are regenerative, that will help you recover and rebuild certain things in your organs that are not working. So that's like, if one intervention, that's the simplest one. And the second one that we all talk about, and it's kind of like, yeah, we know that, sleep. And as much as people say, oh yeah, we know, but actually having good quality sleep is important as well.
Because that repairs your DNA
Totally.
and all that.
Every night, your sleep quality, sleep, food, and working out resistance training. Those three things are the cheap but very effective protocols that you don't need to pay $50,000 a month for, and do transfusions and injections and all this other stuff.
So we tell audience not to make those phone calls or don't send in a request to Artem, okay?
Exactly.
Because those 3 things you got to do.
Exactly.
Those are things that you got to do improve your lifespan. Before you finish those 3, don't call us, okay?
Exactly.
But Artem, like, what keeps you motivated? Like, what keeps you get up in the morning and say, I got to work on this stuff. I got to figure out a solution. What keeps you motivated personally?
I think just knowing that what I'm building is close to having human impact. So being able to either find technologies to invest in that are about to go into clinical trials or about to have a human impact, or build a technology that we're about to launch in clinical phase 1 to be able to have an impact on someone. It's super cool when what you're building will have some sort of positive impact in someone's life. And this could also be in software. Say if someone's developing a cool app or a cool startup that is doing something in the AI and longevity and doing personalized health or wearable, mining wearable information. Again, the way in which it then is, how are you then correlating that into, are you doing something that's helping someone in some capacity? Then that's awesome. Keep doing that.
So it's the success, the little success that motivate you every single step, and then get you keep going and motivate you to keep moving
I'd say it's
forward.
the failures that motivate me more so. That's success.
That's the Silicon Valley spirit.
It's if it's always the good, and you don't acknowledge and accept the bad, then you won't move forward. And there's very often everything will have a time and a place and a opportunity for learning from. And it's the way in how you respond to a situation is what will make it or break it for you.
That's right. So, overall, as we wrap this up, what excites you the most about longevity today? What's cool about this?
We're at this inflection point where technology enabled by AI has made it much more accessible for people to be able to know what's happening with their body. So if you couple that, if you take a wearable merged with some AI tool, plus a bunch of these biomarkers and other things that you can test on your body, and put that all together, you can get a really good picture of what is going on for you personally that you can adjust and change. And then the future aspect of that is what I think is super interesting, and I think this opens up that point of what is that future look like for longevity, is the limitless protocol. Can you actually achieve that? And being able to, so the brain is the next frontier of where things are headed for what people are looking at optimizing for, because that is where a lot of our processes come from. What does the limitless protocol look like for your body that doesn't make you deteriorate faster, but also allows for you to just maybe run faster, be stronger, be more mentally clear? That's a super
can you
interesting
tell us a
space.
little bit more about that? What is the limitless protocol?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
What do you think it means?
It means something about our brain structured in a certain way that we can only do so much. Is that what that means?
Kind of, yeah. So, in a way, your body has a natural capacity. Your brain has a natural capacity. Is there a way in which we can optimize that to optimize capacity? I don't know, but that's super interesting. It's like a frontier question. After the science and technology aspect is worked out, the questions will come of should we do that? That's another question of, and if we are, what does that mean for society? But I think from a science perspective, it's very interesting because the brain's the new frontier right now, and just thinking about what can we learn from understanding more on how our brain works, and so I think it'll be very interesting in the next couple of years.
Wow, amazing! Thank you, Artem, and thank you for coming to our show.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
If there's one thing we've learned tonight, it's this: longevity is no longer a distant idea. It's happening now. From breakthroughs in research to real companies being built, this is a field moving from the lab into everyday life. And people like Artem are helping leading that shift. But at its core, this isn't just about adding years. It's about giving us more time with the people we love and the work that matters. Thanks for joining us on Silicon Valley Unplugged.